Hello and welcome. I'm your host, William Liu. This is the reaction podcast after Canada loses the exhibition game by a score of 86-72 on the Hello and Welcome podcast, presented by Betway. We are going live for the first time post game. It's something that we definitely wanted to try out, see where it looks, and hopefully by the start of the Raptor season, we'll be doing more of these. But yeah, in the meantime, to anybody who's still awake watching this, I salute you. It is 12:40 a.m. local time Eastern, and yeah, so very highly anticipated matchup between the United States and Canada every time they meet. This one was looking really promising for Canada to start. Canada was up after the first quarter, 21-14. Canada looked a little sharper. Certainly, were playing harder. USA was throwing the ball all over the place. 8 turnovers in the first quarter, but as the game went on, I thought the United States did a much better job of locking in defensively. Especially their second unit looked super impressive. I mean, the fact that they could bring AD and Bam as their defensive combo off the bench is just kind of absurd. And yeah, the USA sort of pushed themselves ahead and just sort of stayed in a comfortable position. But at the same time for Canada, though, it's not something that you take completely at face value in this matchup. I mean, you look at the fact that Canada came into this game playing the most hockey lineups you can really imagine. Like 5 starters played together for the first 5 minutes, then all 5 bench guys come in, play for the next, whatever stretch. Then the starters come back in, and it was just kind of like that. There was like no mixing and matching at all with the lineup. So I think clearly Jordi Fernandez was trying to establish some continuity, considering the fact that this is, it's a scrimmage. Like it's not obviously a game for real. So you saw the starters play a ton together, and the starters for Canada were Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Dillon Brooks, RJ Barrett, Dwight Powell, and then the only difference between the World Cup roster versus this one is Jamal Murray coming in for Kelly Olynyk in the starting 5. Obviously, Jamal committing to the team in his stature and his sort of ability, it does warrant a spot in the starting lineup. Of course, that did mean that somebody had to go to the bench, and this time it was Kelly. Yeah, that was the starting 5 for Canada. The United States, I mean, they're kind of in transition. Obviously Kawhi just left the roster, then KD got injured or something. So, but still, they got Devin Booker, LeBron James, Joel Embiid, Stephen Curry, and Jrue Holiday. I honestly Jrue Holiday as the fill-in starter for those 5 guys, because I don't know if like the actual game start, if he's actually gonna like be in the starting 5, but he was actually awesome. I thought out of all those other guys, Jrue Holiday really stood out, especially defensively. Like he was just an absolute menace. But yeah, from Canada's perspective, like it looked okay to start. USA being super rusty really did help. I mean, they didn't have their first basket until like 5 minutes into the game. It was like 8-1 Canada by that point. And the States definitely put a lot of defensive attention against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and then Jamal Murray just couldn't really get loose. Now, with Shai, I'm not worried about Shai in the slightest. Number one, first off, he was playing against Jrue Holiday the whole game, and I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses, especially for an MVP level player, but anybody going against Jrue Holiday the whole game, especially when they barely called any fouls. Yeah, 3 of 10 for Shai is not the most surprising, but I thought Shai actually touched the paint quite a bit, kicked it out, did a good job of creating offense and not forcing it too much. I actually liked most of the looks that he got. What worried me more was Jamal. Like I didn't really feel like Jamal created any advantages, and outside of like relocating for catch and shoot 3 here or a little bit driving layup here, like it just wasn't. You didn't really feel like a 1-2 punch. I mean, quite frankly, neither of them were that impressive. The fact that they go a combined 5 for 18, but I think with Shai, you felt a level of confidence that he can get to his spots, that the defense really has to respect him, that he's got to be really corralled. With Jamal, I don't know. Number one, he just didn't look as assertive. Like there were moments where he had Steph Curry on him, which if you look at the starting lineup for the States, the one guy you would want to attack is Steph, right? And even in those moments where you can go one-on-one against Steph, he was still passing it up. So I thought just for me, I'm sort of keeping my eye on that. There'll be more warm-up games, and I'll be, keeping a close eye on just how Jamal adjusts and adapts to the game. But in this one, it didn't really feel like he had that big of an impact. RJ kind of playing off of those other two guys as a third starter, a third option on offense, looked fine. Some good cuts to the basket, 2 or 3 from 3, which is nice from RJ. Split a couple free throws, which is something that continues to be. I mean, obviously there's a lot of Raptor fans watching. We all know that RJ really struggled with free throws very curiously this season. There was like a point, like I think around February, around like January, February range, where RJ was shooting better from 3 than from free throws, which is just unheard of, really. But RJ goes 4 of 8 from the foul line. But I thought he played with force, took advantage of the fact that Shea and Jamal were, capitalizing and drawing a bunch of attention. And so RJ was popping free. And then, yeah, Dillon Brooks, had a couple of moments, really energized the group. I thought he played fearless. He played really well defensively. He really tried to lock in. Obviously, he relishes every opportunity to play against LeBron, but this is just how Dillon is against everybody. Like, some of the funniest moments from Dillon over, last year's World Cup run was like Dillon Brooks pulling out the boxing gloves after, him and Luka got into it. You know what I mean? So, like, this is just Dillon Brooks' character. And honestly, at the FIBA level, Dillon Brooks playing with that physicality, is a huge plus. Is a huge plus for me. And then Dwight Powell, obviously he's never going to get the ball. And if he does get the ball, he's wide open or it's late shot clock or whatever. His job is mostly just there to bang defensively, get some rebounds, take some fouls, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, tonight he had largely single coverage against Joel Embiid. Like Canada would bring late help, and that sometimes would be a factor, but for the most part Dwight Powell actually did a really good job holding up defensively. I mean, out of all the USA starters, like, nobody started well for the States. As I mentioned, the first 5 minutes they couldn't score, but as the game went on, pretty much like Devin Booker was making the shots, and LeBron's LeBron, and Steph Curry had like a 9-0 run at one point by himself, and Jrue Holiday, like I mentioned, was awesome defensively. And Embiid was the one for USA in the starting 5 that was just like, what are you doing out there? Like, he looked so slow and lazy on defense. He was just getting blown by, not even giving a challenge, and ended up fouling out after 12 minutes. You only get 5 fouls in the FIBA game. It's 4 10-minute quarters. But, yeah, he fouled out in 12 minutes, including one play where he got a flagrant foul or in this case, an unsportsmanlike foul, for elbowing Dwight Powell on a box out. And he really got the elbow high. He, I mean, it's not like a full-on, Meta World Peace against James Harden level of elbow, but, he got his elbow high and he, pressed it into Dwight Powell's head. Like, it just completely unnecessary on that type of play. And especially considering it's an exhibition game too. But, yeah, in any case, I thought Canada starters for the most part actually held their own. It was just the second unit that was such a difference in quality. I mean, immediately after Canada got into the lead, what brought the States back into the game was Anthony Edwards, who was super electric, super aggressive. I don't know, he had that quote where he was like, I'm going to be the number 1 option on this team. And honestly, 10 shots in 19 minutes, super aggressive, created most of his own offense. He looked lethal, honestly. He looked really lethal, and he was awesome in the first half. And then, of course, the size. I mean, when you talk about Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo coming off the second unit against Kelly Olynyk and, Trey Lyles as their opposites, they're definitely going to dominate with their size. And Edey in particular, I thought, was excellent. Bam did a decent job too. But particularly AD was really, physical. And Tyrese Halliburton kind of eased into the game, but really got it going with his passing. Was actually pretty disruptive defensively in this one. Got a lot of deflections. So second unit was kind of not a contest, quite frankly. But in any case, for Canada, a couple trends I'm going to watch for. Number one is, are the lineups going to look like this all the time? Because quite frankly, there is no need for Jordy to be playing hockey lineups. Maybe I'm hoping that the thought process here was let's go and get continuity for the starters, and then let's get continuity for the second unit to some degree. But for the most part, I just don't want to see that. When the games actually matter, which will be as soon as the Olympics start, in the group stages, I'm gonna need one of Shea or Jamal to be on the floor at all times. And quite frankly, given the way that Jamal's looking for me right now, because he does look really rusty, I would prefer if RJ and Jamal were out there when Shea's not on the court. And that obviously that would mean that you would split some of the minutes, and you would have to sort of break them apart a little bit. I know one of the things Jordy was highlighting in training camp was that he doesn't want to overtax his lineup, and that was one of the issues that they ran into last year at the World Cup, was they only trusted 7 players, and eventually that wore them down. Um, but quite frankly, for me, like I just don't think that the rest of the guys are at a level where they can consistently generate offense. It's one thing if like Canada's running a really intricate system and they had great passing bigs and they had great flow, and the system generates a lot of offense. Like you feel like for a lot of international basketball, when you watch like Greece, when you watch like you watch Spain, you watch like you know the Argentina team of the past, right? That upset Team USA. Those type of teams really have like a built-in sort of like the movement, the ball movement, the cutting, everything like that. That Europeans play style, generally speaking, just creates a lot of good offense. Canada doesn't really play that. It very much feels and looks like a bunch of NBA players like essentially carrying over an NBA game. But that's fine. The NBA game is really predicated on like you have a couple of like dominant creators who are creating advantages all the time and creating like breakdowns or physical advantages with their size, and that leads to sort of open shots or cuts or whatever. um, but again, that only works if the other guys have these huge advantages. And that's where, for me, the second unit, this is something I'm watching out for. Neither of Andrew Nembhard, friend of the program, or Nickeil Alexander-Walker, neither of them look particularly good offensively. I thought Andrew, for the most part, took decent shots, but just couldn't get any jumpers to fall. Literally went 0 for 5 from the field. Most of them were jumpers, though. He couldn't get his shot to fall. Just didn't look particularly comfortable. And then Nickeil, which was a little surprising to me that he was more on ball than Andrew. I mean, just based on their NBA profile, Andrew is obviously a little bit more accomplished than Nickeil. But Nickeil, in an on-ball capacity, I just didn't think that he was creating that much. My overall thing with Nickeil is like, he's certainly a really good player, and there's gonna be moments where when he's really good, he's gonna swing games, and that's something that is an inherent quality for that you would want from a bench player, let's say. But there's an overall like softness or like apprehension, or like he's just not sure. He's not like, you don't see him playing with force. Like you see Dillon Brooks playing with force when he's driving and he's looking to take a shot, or when he crosses up LeBron and takes a step back and actually makes it. Like he's playing with force. He's drawing the fouls. Nickeil kind of like, I'm not even gonna say he plays a little soft, but it's just like it just feels unsure. It feels a little hesitant. Defensively, I think he's actually done a good job. He gets skinny, he gets around screens, all that kind of stuff. But offensively, it just didn't feel like he played with the requisite punch that you need from him. Regardless, the fact that your two guards off the bench shot 2 for 12, right, with only 1 3 for Nickeil, and that came in like by the time Canada was already down double digits. Like that's a big issue, and that's where I would really love for Jamal to be able to assert himself, because I know Jamal definitely has that ability to create, especially when he's healthy. Either that or RJ, at least with RJ, you can tell that he can get downhill and he can put pressure on the basket. It feels like with Andrew and Nickeil, neither of them really drove it with any force, with any intention to actually score at the rim either. So those are two things I'm watching out for. And then the third thing is just like when you put Jamal in the starting lineup, and he's going to be in the starting lineup. Like obviously this is like not a great game, but like, we're not going to give up on that. But like when you put Jamal in the starting lineup, that does shift the defensive responsibilities around a little bit, right? All of a sudden now RJ or Shea, they have to guard like Steph Curry, right? Now, that's fine. Like if it was Kelly Olynyk starting instead of Jamal, it's not like Kelly's going to be, guarding Steph. But at the same time, you watch it and you're like, well, does RJ have the defensive chops to do that? Or does Shea have the defensive chops to do that? And if they do, how much does it take away from them offensively to have to put in that much defensively? Like the first two baskets for Team USA, for example, were both was Steph losing RJ on a dribble handoff. RJ was late, jumped for it, tried to guess, and Steph pump faked him and got a wide open look and knocked down the three. And then the second play that USA actually scored on was Anthony Edwards crossing up RJ and driving all the way to the basket for a reverse layup. So, stuff like that where it's like now RJ has to be like your primary defender on the perimeter. Shea has to do that to some degree as well. I mean, everyone's got to take responsibility, but still, it's just not the most ideal of roles. Now, of course, in this one, the unique matchup against Team USA is that, like, they have like 8 or 9 guys that like require your main guy to be guarding. So they're obviously like the exception as compared to like other matchups when you look across the world. But at the same time, like Dillon Brooks is just one man and he was there guarding LeBron. So like what do you want the other guys to be doing? Maybe you would switch up the matchups a little bit, put RJ on LeBron to match size maybe a little bit, and then use Dillon for like Steph. But still, it does feel like they're a little bit pressed because obviously Jamal's not going to be the guy who's be the shutdown defender for the group. So in any case, like there's a couple of things to sort of work through. Again, the lineups are what they are. I don't think I would change the starting five. I think I would just try to get everyone into a better rhythm. And I think more than anything else, it's not even about the starting five. It's about staggering some of the lineups because like, yeah, I mean, first shift, second shift with the first unit, second unit, like this, it just shouldn't be like that. But hopefully this is just a product of this game being an exhibition. Now I know there'll be people in the chat, and I know producer Alex Wong will be in there looking for a couple questions. I'm going to try to take like 3 questions towards the end there, just to sort of like get the engagement there, and Alex will let me know what those are on stream when he eventually gets to them. But yeah, I mean, for Canada, like the other big news is that the roster finally was announced. The final 12 players that will be going to Paris will be obviously the starting 5: RJ, Dillon Brooks, Dwight Powell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, and then Kelly Olynyk, Lugan Storts, Trey Lyles, Andrew Nembhard, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kem Birch, and Melvin Ejim. I actually really appreciate what Canada is doing with some of these other guys that they're also continuing to bring with them overseas. And, they're obviously not going to feature in the games. They're not officially on the team. But Thomas Scrub, Phil Scrub, Fiondu Kabengele, these guys actually are still going to be with the team. They're just going to be helping out with practices, maybe even extra bodies, things like that, offering support. But, like, that's actually really cool to me. Like, that to me is, like, I know obviously they're not as good as the guys who ultimately made the final cut, but the fact that they're making the sacrifice for the country is like genuine, like salute. That's actually awesome that they're essentially volunteering their time to help out with the program. But yeah, I mean, the final 2 being Kem Birch and Melvin Ejim. I think Ejim, I always thought that he was going to make the roster. I know there were maybe other wings that you could potentially take, like an O'Shea Brissett, but I think with Ejim, it's just the experience factor. It's the fact that everyone likes him. It's it's the fact that he can come in there and be a perimeter, switchy, bigger wing. If you look at Canada, the one thing with the roster is they're like kind of skinny. Like there's a couple guys that are physical, like Lou Dort, Dillon Brooks is physical, RJ's physical on offense. The rest of the guys, like, I just, it doesn't feel quite like there's just a lot of skinny guys on the roster. Like I actually like Melvin being able to come in there and sort of throw his weight around when needed. And then Kem Birch, I know like Kem, by the time he left Toronto, his body was just really banged up and broken, and it just didn't really feel like he could contribute and make an impact. But that's actually one of the more heartwarming things was Kem got to play a lot of the fourth quarter here. And I mean, forget the performance because it was like whatever, he got like an and one, or he got like a putback dunk or whatever. But like for me, it was just seeing him be healthy out there, like jump around, like actually leave the ground for dunks and things like that. Just for him personally, like I think that it's just cool to see him. Also, wearing the number 92 is just a wild number. But Kem Birch, yeah, I mean, I know it's like not anybody's, like, it's not a super thrilling final 2 names, but just solid guy, the Kem that you could throw in there when you need an extra big, or when your bigs are in foul trouble, and Melvin's there if you need another like extra spare wing. But a lot of these guys aren't really going to play. Having said that, though, you do have 10 NBA guys that you will probably play most games. And I'm really hoping, again, like I said, that it's not just going to be hockey style lineup changes. I'm hoping, quite frankly, that the rotation isn't 10. Like 10 is a huge rotation, especially for a 40-minute game when you think about it. I thought Canada looked better and better in the World Cup when they mostly played with 7. Now, granted, they didn't have they only had 7 NBA players, so those were kind of the 7 that they kind of ran with ultimately. But still, I do feel like there are going to be certain games where it's like, do you need both Andrew Nembhard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker out there off the bench? Or would you rather have one of them come off the bench and you extend Jamal Murray's minutes, or you extend Shai's minutes, right? Do you need both Trey Lyles and Kelly coming off the bench? Probably, just because there's only 3 bigs, because they're only playing 1 with the starting 5. But like, those little kind of questions I think will kind of be there. But for the most part, it's an exhibition game. They're out there trying to shake off some rust. I like the hunger that they played with to start the game. It really felt like they were trying to attack it. And on the USA side, they looked kind of more slower. They looked a little bit lazier. They were throwing some like, bad passes. At times, it felt like the States were just kind of easing into it. But yeah, like I mentioned, man, like it's a lot of the guys out the second unit. The second unit being younger guys is is really noticeable. Like you see Anthony Edwards comes in and he's like immediately electric, and he's immediately putting pressure on the basket, and he's immediately just looking to attack and taking it to the hole. I mean, the other guys for Team USA were kind of like slower, versus like Jason Tatum coming in, and he was just getting to the rim at will. Like he didn't even take any jumpers. The one thing with Tatum sometimes is like he falls off with the jumper, and we all know sort of the pull up three stats are a little bit lower than what it looks like based on his abilities. But like him just taking a strong to the cup nonstop. I mean, granted it was Kelly Olynyk playing center, so like just like we saw towards the end of the Raptors season, it was like, okay, there's zero rim protection here. But yeah, those guys bringing a ton of youth. Tyrese Halliburton, pushing the pace as always. I don't know if he's always gonna be that good defensively, but he was actually really in the right spots quite a bit. And then yeah, I mean, bringing Bam and AD off the bench is just, man, it's just disgusting. It's just so like it's gluttony. This is the gluttony that they're writing about. And honestly, it feels like, I mean, I know Embiid is going to obviously play, and I suppose they recruited him so hard that they need to put him in the starting lineup. He is, an MVP in the way that like AD is an MVP and like Bam is an MVP, but there's something about Joel is just like, it's just a miserable experience watching him. Like he's just sitting back in that super deep drop, wasn't very active at all defensively. Offensively, yes, he's gonna play with force, but he's not gonna draw the same type of fouls that he does in the NBA. You could definitely tell. Like anybody who's watched the FIBA game can tell you, it's entirely different officiating, right? I'm not saying that like they're like the Copa America's officials, but like it's a different whistle. It's the same basketball game, but it's the same sport, but it's a different whistle, and it makes for a very, very different attack and approach. But I think for me, it's more importantly, it's just Embiid's got to be better defensively, man. If he's just gonna sit back in that super deep drop and be lazy and let people drive to the rim and not challenge and not rebound aggressively and all that kind of stuff, like teams are going to eat that up internationally, because they're all you see when you see international basketball is stretch bigs, is guards who are fundamentally sound, who can knock down a good pull-up three when they're wide open. So I think USA is going to have a much better job when they have Bam and AD, and those guys are able to show and be, switch and, pressure on defense. Like Canada really struggled with those guys, quite frankly. And in the moments that Canada did score, there were just kind of like miscommunications and things like that, where like Kelly's pop free, or like Lou Dort pop free, or like Trey Lyles pop free. But like ultimately, they're terrifying. And the more the USA gets together, that's where the higher level is going to come from. But I don't know. Is Embiid and the rest of the starting five for the USA, which is older, like Devin Booker's the only like person in their 20s in the starting five. Like Embiid's 30, LeBron's damn near 40, Steph's like 36, Jrue Holiday's like 34, 35. Like, it is weird that they have a whole bunch of like ready to go 20-year-olds coming off the bench, and the starting five is like what it is. But still, I mean, like, what are you gonna complain about having LeBron? Like LeBron, by the way, LeBron watching this game, like you could tell how much he's wanting to play with Steph, because he's like instantly popped into like, oh, I could just play some like Draymond like activities. Like I know I'm LeBron James and I'm like arguably the greatest player of all time, but like in a game with Steph Curry, let me just be Draymond. Let me set an illegal screen. Let me set him up, let me run the break with him and just come up with highlights. Like they looked really, really eager to play with one another. So, I mean, it's Team USA, like they're always going to be like worthwhile to watch and everything like that. And everyone's going to be, focusing a lot on them. But, if they did have one weakness, I would say it's probably just the fact that they're a little bit older. And Embiid certainly looks like a weakness. But, I mean, still, realistically, we know they're overwhelming favorites to win, because there's most teams just have a couple weaknesses, and I think Canada is very much one of those teams that has a couple weaknesses. But in terms of like how we compare with the rest of the countries, or even on if we got a fighting chance, I think we got a fighting chance. And I think that's where hopefully again, Jamal, I'm really keeping a close eye on him. Like, how is he gonna look? Shea, I know he can play better than this, and to be honest, he got lots of good looks and he created lots of chances in the paint. But the rest of the guys are kind of what they are, and it's up to the coaching and it's up to the stars to sort of like play at their level or even slightly above their level. But yeah, I'm gonna try to take some questions. I don't know if Alex and Jerome, if you guys have some questions for me in the chat. Oh, this one. Okay, there we go. Okay, is this one for Massimo? See, who is the bigger loss for this team, Zach Edey or Andrew Wiggins? Edey would have brought the size, and Wiggins could have been the key player off the bench. So that's a great question. Honestly, first off, both of them should be on Team Canada, especially watching this now. I think for me, especially watching Zach play a couple of the Summer League games, I'm already like, damn it. Like, we might have like looked too much at the fact that he was slow footed. I think he's gotten quicker. I think he could actually play at a higher pace now. And yeah, I mean, there's that. But I think, yeah, for me, they're both big losses in a way. I think for Wiggins, he probably brings just a little bit more on the perimeter defense. But quite frankly, like, I actually think our perimeter defense is okay. Between Dillon and Lou Dort, the rest of the perimeter defenders are actually okay. Like, if Wiggins were in, for example, he'd probably take, honestly, for me, he'd take all of Nikhil's minutes. I just don't think that, like, especially what I would want to see from Nikhil, which is 3 and D, I think Wiggins would be better at that. Nikhil is a better 3-point shooter, but Wiggins offers more just overall. And then Zach would have been interesting just because, like, Kelly and Zach coming off the bench. I think I actually prefer that more than like Kelly and Trey Lyles coming off the bench, because of the fact that, like, for me, Kelly should really be as a 4, not as a 5. I think you get Zach competing for rebounds at a much higher level than either Kelly or Trey Lyles can. But I think more importantly, like, you just bend the defense in a way that's like totally different than two spacing 5s who, yeah, it's good that Kelly and Trey are spacing from the outside, but at the same time, when the other team's able to switch a ton, which the States is obviously very unique in that front. Like, I mean, look at their bench, man. But when they're able to switch like that, all of a sudden it is much harder for those spacing 5s to sort of create an impact unless they're slipping to the basket and capitalizing off mistakes. So Zach would have been offering something totally different. So, I mean, they're both big losses in their own way. So that's a good question, though, from Massimo. What's our next question, guys? This is fun. I like going live. This is cool. All right, next one from Terry. What team outside of USA do you think Canada will have the toughest time against? I think for me, it's got to be France. Luckily, I don't think Canada would see France until the knockout stages. But, like, yeah, I mean, I'm really curious, almost in like a science experiment way, like how our team's going to play against France offensively when they have both Wemby and Rudy Gobert in the paint with no defensive 3 seconds. Now, of course, the answer to that is obviously you got to beat them from the perimeter, got to set a lot of screens, try to force Rudy on switches, get them to do the dance like Luka did in the Western Conference Finals. But, like, that's easier said than done, man. That's like, I just want to know, because to me, it seems like if France really wanted to, they can almost have both of those guys in the paint and have 3 other guys covering and running around on the perimeter, and they can completely shut down the paint in a way that I think I'm just like curious. Like, obviously, if like they play USA and they're both camping on the lane and Team USA is running Steph off screens, getting him open looks, and okay, they're probably going to change the coverage. But, like, yeah, just in general, I'll be very curious. But for Canada, yeah, in particular, like, I think you could see already that their outside shooting is kind of iffy. Like, there are not necessarily knockdown 3-point shooters. There's not a lot of movement 3-point shooting. I think that's where you would want Jamal to really step up on that front. But there's a lot of, like, rely on Shea primarily, but maybe other guys to sort of touch the paint and then kick out and catch and shoot corner standstill 3-point shooting. Canada has that. But yeah, that's where I think France will give them such issues, because I don't think France will be in rotation as much because, again, they have those 2 7-footers just patrolling the paint again with no defensive 3 seconds. So yeah, a lot of teams are going to struggle with France. And then we'll take one more question and I'll hand out the 3 stars. And Yeah, let us know too if you like this live format. The last one here from the Taylor Vault. Thoughts on how annoying the commentators were. I would have rather listened to Matt and Jack call the game from a TV truck parked in a Tobaco parking lot. Why is it always the Tobaco parking lots, man? Why are they calling the game from Mimico? But yeah, I well, first off, I thought the game would have enough prominence that maybe like Sportsnet had the game, for example, like maybe Sportsnet could have sent a crew to call a game or even call the game off a monitor, like the suggestion here. I think this is just how entertainment is in the States. Like it's very Team USA oriented. Like sure, like they had a couple of things to say about the Canadian side, but they're primarily focused on the States. Like and let's be real, it's USA basketball. Like this is an institution. It's bigger than anything else. It's arguably, like, in terms of American like sports, like it's probably their biggest program when you think about it. It's bigger than like US soccer. It's like so much bigger than US soccer, which is a joke. It's I don't even know, like the rest of like USA baseball, like yeah, I mean, yeah, to some degree, but like baseball is not as much of a global sport as basketball is, for example. Yeah, like this is their main program, so they're gonna talk about them a ton, and you could get the distinct like exhibition feel. Like at one point they couldn't start the second quarter because like people wouldn't stop taking selfies with Obama courtside, and it's like, all right, guys, like, yeah, cool, like it's the former president, but like, can we get back to the game? Like, I need to see how Trey Lyles looks with Kelly Olynyk and as a two big lineup. Like, there's bigger things here than the president, but yeah, I don't know. It was a bit of an annoying broadcast, but like that's just how it is. Like again, like they're catering for their audience. Like the States is very much like USA first. You even saw the USA chants, which to me are the most obnoxious chants in sports. But that's just how it is. And honestly, salute to them. Like imagine if Canada had. Well, I guess this is like if we watch hockey, like just all star after all star after all star, coming off the bench. So yeah, they got a lot to be proud of, but still, I think Canada is in that mix, right? In that mix to be with everyone else, and obviously they got a puncher's chance against anybody. And look, Canada was super rusty. Everyone was super rusty in this one. Like Canada shot 7 of 33 from three, and 13 of 20 from the free throw line. So if you don't hit your jumpers against a team like the States, who have all the physical size and athleticism in the world, you're not going to win. But at the same time, it was still close enough. And yeah, you just need a couple of things to break for you. So to wrap up your 3 stars in this game, first star, I don't even know, man. I might give that to Dillon Brooks, honestly. I just like Dillon Brooks' attitude. I like his leadership. In a real game like this, Dillon Brooks would be playing like 35 minutes. Like if Canada was playing USA in like a must win, Dillon Brooks would be playing like 35 minutes. Shea would be playing like probably 40. Honestly, I'd probably want to play him the whole game. Jamal was certainly playing more than 17, guys like that. But I just like Dillon's attitude. I think like the rest of the team for Canada is really muted. You don't necessarily see like guys, yelling and like big personality. Dillon actually, I really really enjoy when he plays for Canada, and I thought he was actually really good for the team. I mean, again, like I didn't really think he should guard LeBron because like LeBron wasn't really looking to score. LeBron was looking to pass and assist. So, but still, Dillon played well. What do you have here? He had 10 points here, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal. Dropped LeBron on a crossover. It's not bad. Your second star, I'm actually gonna give that to Dwight Powell, mostly because of just the physical punishment of having to wrestle Embiid again. Like I can't stress enough how shameless it is for a man to be elbowing another man in the head in an exhibition game. Like please, like I like just when you think Embiid, like I don't know. I mean, it's a physical play. Like you can actually see the camera was like very closely on him and Dwight Powell, who talked about it afterwards. And obviously Dwight Powell's like, dude, what are you doing? And Embiid's like, I'm being physical. And it's like, yeah, okay, but like I didn't see nobody else get elbowed in the head, man. Like, what are you picking up a flagrant foul for? And why are you picking up 5 fouls in 12 minutes? It's just shameless. But in any case, like it's still Embiid, so it's hard to guard this guy. And I thought Dwight Powell actually did a really good job wrestling against him in the post. I mean, Dwight Powell is like a crash test dummy for this team Canada team. He's going to take so much punishment against players way bigger than him. And in terms of physicality, he actually does really bring it. Offensively, he's kind of a zero, but like, what can you really do? Your third star, man. Am I really gonna give Kem Birch my third star? I'm gonna give Kem Birch my third star. I'm really happy for Kem, but I'm not gonna give him a third. I'll give it to Kelly. I thought Kelly. I mean, Kelly always plays really well for Team Canada. Really crafty, knows how to like fall over, draw a foul here or there. Was really good at slipping free to the basket. Against a lot of shot blockers too, so he had to get a shot off super quick around the hoop. But Kelly's never in a rush. He's always on time. Yeah, really good off the bench. 14 minutes, had 9 points, 4 or 5 from the field, 3 or 4 from 2, and knocked down a corner 3 as well with 3 assists. Again, he needs a lot of help defensively. So the rebounding front, he only got 1 rebound. That's where you need Trey Lyles. That's where you need Lou Dort. That's where you need one of Nembhard or Nikhil to like really like play super physical. Like I'd even explore maybe Kem playing alongside of Kelly instead. But ultimately, yeah, like Kelly's, really good for that second unit. Your Gerald Henderson Award winner. Let's just give it to Kem. Shots, actually no. So the Gerald Henderson Award winner is on the state side, obviously. Who randomly lit up, Team Canada? I don't even know, to be honest, man. I'll probably give it to Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday. I mean, there were moments where he was like guarding Shea, then he would get like a dribble handoff to like Jamal, and then he'd switch on to Jamal, and then he'd fight through a screen, and then he like hand check and like wrestle, keep a guy locked in front. And like guys, I mean, like those are 2 incredible guards in Shea and Jamal, and they couldn't get anything really off against Jrue. He's terrifying, man, especially now that he's hit this point in his career where like for the Celtics and also obviously for Team Canada or Team USA, it's like he doesn't need to focus on offense at all. He's just going to like put all his energy into defending, and he is terrifying defensively, man. So I'll give it to Jrue Holiday. It doesn't even matter how he scored, it's really how he guarded. So yeah, this was fun. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for people for sending in questions. I see a lot of comments in the chat. That's cool. Let us know, honestly, if you enjoyed this sort of live format. For the show itself, we're going down to Summer League. We're flying out tomorrow, and we'll be obviously on hand for the Raptors. Lots of players to watch for in that instance there. I think like 7 rostered players are going to be there. In terms of like guys signed to like actual Raptors contracts will be there. So excited to get a closer look at all those guys. Hopefully we land some interviews as well. Hopefully we get some more special guests on the program. But in the meantime, appreciate everyone for watching. Please continue to rate, review, subscribe. Please like the video on YouTube. Give it some engagement. Give it some comments. And yeah, you've been listening to the Hello and Welcome podcast presented by Betway.